What if the greatest secrets of existence weren't hidden behind locks or codes, but guarded by creatures of nightmare and legend? Picture a dragon coiled around ancient wisdom, a sphinx posing riddles that could cost you your life, or a serpent whispering temptations that could unravel reality itself. This isn't merely the stuff of fairy tales. It's one of humanity's oldest and most pervasive storytelling patterns, appearing in sacred texts from the Garden of Eden to the epic poems of ancient Greece, from Norse sagas to Eastern philosophies. These monstrous guardians weren't random creations. They were deliberate, sophisticated barriers placed between humankind and knowledge deemed too dangerous to possess. Why would cultures across time and geography consistently choose monsters as the gatekeepers of forbidden knowledge? What does it say about us that we imagine these terrifying beings as the protectors of truths about immortality, cosmic order, and the nature of good and evil? The answer lies deep within our collective psychology, our cultural structures, and our fundamental understanding of power. These stories represent something profound about the human condition, our simultaneous thirst for understanding and our fear of what that understanding might cost us. They speak to the eternal dance between curiosity and consequence, between the desire to know everything and the wisdom to recognize that some knowledge carries weight too heavy for unprepared hands. In this exploration, we'll journey through the legendary tales that have shaped civilizations, unpacking why forbidden knowledge was perpetually shielded by monsters. We'll examine how these creatures serve as metaphors for our deepest fears, how they enforce moral and social boundaries, and what they reveal about who gets to control knowledge and why. From psychological underpinnings to cultural contexts, from ancient initiation rites to modern digital guardians, we'll uncover the timeless patterns that continue to resonate in our world today. This is more than just mythology. It's a mirror reflecting humanity's most fundamental tensions, and by understanding these stories, we might just understand something essential about ourselves. But what exactly constitutes this forbidden knowledge? It's a concept that appears far more complex than simply a list of secrets one shouldn't know. At its heart, forbidden knowledge represents any idea, skill, or profound truth that a society, a religion, or a culture has collectively decided is too dangerous, too destabilizing, or too sacred for the general populace to possess. Think about the secret of immortality, a concept that appears in countless legends, from the epic of Gilgamesh searching for a plant that grants eternal life to alchemists in the Middle Ages seeking the philosopher's stone. This knowledge is forbidden not because it's inherently evil, but because it disrupts the natural order, challenging the very cycle of life and death that defines our existence. Similarly, the inner workings of fate and destiny often fall into this category. In ancient Greek mythology, simply knowing a prophecy could set into motion a chain of events that led to its fulfillment, demonstrating that the knowledge itself held an active, dangerous power. And then there's the ultimate forbidden fruit, the knowledge of good and evil, as presented in the biblical story of Eden. This isn't just about understanding right from wrong. It's about acquiring the godlike ability to define it for oneself, a power that fundamentally alters humanity's relationship with the divine and with each other. The common thread weaving through all these examples is that this knowledge is never neutral. It's never just information. It is intrinsically about power, raw, transformative, and potentially catastrophic power. Who gets to control this knowledge? Who is deemed worthy enough to wield it responsibly? And what are the dire consequences if it falls into unprepared or ill-intentioned hands? These are the urgent questions that ancient societies were grappling with, By encoding these dangerous truths within stories and placing monstrous guardians at their gates, they were creating a cultural safety mechanism. The monster acts as a narrative fuse box. It doesn't just block the way, it tests for the right qualifications, be it purity of heart, strength of character, or wisdom of spirit. It ensures that the seeker understands the immense weight of what they are asking for, long before they ever lay hands on it. This intricate system of storytelling reveals a deep, universal understanding that some truths are so potent they require not just a lock and key, but a living, breathing, and terrifying challenge. But these guardians are far more than just physical barriers standing in a hero's path. They are, in their very essence, living metaphors. They give a terrifying face to the abstract and often invisible dangers that come with pursuing truths we are not meant to possess. Consider the classic dragon, so often depicted coiled atop a massive hoard of gold and jewels. On the surface, it's a beast to be slain for a fabulous treasure. But look deeper, and this creature becomes a powerful symbol of greed and the corrosive, destructive allure of material wealth. The knowledge it guards might be a secret to unimaginable riches or alchemical transformation, but the dragon itself warns that the pursuit of such wealth can consume you, turning you into a monstrous hoarder isolated on your own pile of gold, forever guarding your prize and fearing any who might try to take it. Then there is the Sphinx of Greek myth, a creature with the body of a lion and the head of a human. It doesn't merely attack, it poses a riddle, and failure means death. This monster perfectly embodies the peril of intellectual pride and overconfidence. The knowledge it protects is wisdom itself, but the test is a warning. It suggests that raw intelligence without true understanding, or cleverness without humility, is a fatal flaw. The Sphinx represents the idea that some knowledge can make you arrogant, leading you to believe you are smarter than the gods or the natural order, a hubris that ultimately leads to your own downfall. The hero who succeeds isn't just the one who knows the answer, but the one who understands the deeper meaning behind the question. This process of externalizing our internal struggles is a cornerstone of why these stories are so effective and enduring. Concepts like temptation, corruption, and the fear of madness are incredibly difficult to describe or warn against. How do you explain the slow slide into moral decay? How do you illustrate the terrifying prospect of having your mind shattered by a truth too vast to comprehend? You create a monster. The serpent in the Garden of Eden isn't just a talking snake. It is the very embodiment of temptation and the seductive nature of forbidden understanding. It makes the abstract danger of disobedience tangible and immediate. When a hero steps forward to battle these creatures, they are doing much more than fighting for a prize. They are engaging in a profound psychological confrontation. They are staring into a mirror that reflects their own potential for greed, their own intellectual vanity, or their own susceptibility to corruption. The physical battle is just the outward manifestation of an immense internal struggle. The risk isn't merely death, it's the chance that in seeking this power, you could lose your soul, your sanity, or your very humanity. The monster serves as the ultimate teacher of this harsh lesson, ensuring that the cost of overreaching is not just stated, but visceral, memorable, and terrifying. It transforms a simple cautionary tale into a deep, resonant myth about the price of ambition. This pattern of using monstrous guardians to protect profound truths extends far beyond individual stories and taps directly into the very bedrock of cultural and religious belief systems. Across civilizations, these creatures were not merely plot devices. They were integral enforcers of divine will and the unchanging laws of the cosmos. In ancient Egypt, the afterlife was not a given right but an earned privilege determined by the weighing of the heart ceremony. Those whose hearts, heavy with sin, failed to balance against the feather of truth faced a terrifying fate. The demon Ammit, a monstrous composite of a crocodile, lion, and hippopotamus, waited not to fight but to devour. She was the ultimate guardian of the afterlife's secrets, ensuring that only the morally pure could proceed to the divine realms. Her very existence upheld the fundamental principle of cosmic order, truth, and justice. She was a divine instrument, a necessary monster protecting the spiritual equilibrium of the entire universe. This concept of the monster as a supportive, almost architectural part of creation is powerfully illustrated in Hinduism with the serpent Shesha, or Ananta. This colossal, multi-headed cobra is not a villain to be slain. It is the eternal couch upon which the god Vishnu rests between cycles of creation, and its countless hoods form a protective canopy. Shesha is literally the foundation that supports the universe, all while guarding the profound cosmic knowledge of existence, preservation, and dissolution. This portrays a guardian whose role is not about prohibition through fear, but about preservation through immense, stable power. The knowledge is safe because the universe itself is balanced upon its coils. Looking at the Norse tradition, we find the dragon Nidhogg, a creature that perpetually gnaws at the roots of the world tree, Yggdrasil. This act is not one of mindless destruction, but a part of the natural cycle of decay and rebirth that the cosmos requires. Nidhogg guards the understanding of this harsh, necessary cycle, a knowledge that is frightening and uncomfortable, but fundamental to the Norse understanding of reality. It's a knowledge that, if accessed without reverence, could unravel the very fabric of the world. These contexts reveal a universal truth. Monsters in religious myth are rarely simple antagonists. They are often vital components of a cosmological system, acting as extensions of the gods themselves, or as manifestations of natural forces that are both creative and destructive. Their primary function is to maintain a sacred balance. They ensure that profound truths, the secrets of the afterlife, the mechanics of the cosmos, the laws of morality, are not treated lightly. Access is reserved for those who have undergone the proper rituals, who possess the required purity, or who have been chosen by the divine. This gatekeeping is not about oppression, but about protection. It safeguards both the individual from the soul-shattering weight of knowledge they cannot bear and society from the chaos that could erupt if such power were democratized. The monster, in its terrifying majesty, becomes the guardian of spiritual and social equilibrium, a living, breathing boundary between the mortal and the divine. And so the hero steps forward. They have heard the whispers of a hidden truth, felt the pull of a power beyond their understanding, and now they stand before the gatekeeper, not a locked door, but a living, breathing challenge. This moment is the heart of the hero's journey, a narrative pattern so universal it echoes across every culture. The monster is the final, definitive examination, a test designed not merely to see if the hero can win a fight, but to determine if they possess the essential qualities needed to bear the weight of the knowledge they seek. It is a trial of worthiness in its purest form. Consider the labors of Heracles. His battle with the Lernean Hydra was far more than a simple feat of strength. This was a creature that grew 2 heads for every one that was cut off, a seemingly unstoppable force of regenerative chaos. To defeat it, Heracles had to innovate, to call upon his nephew for help, and to use fire to cauterize the wounds. The Hydra wasn't just a monster, it was a puzzle that tested his problem-solving, his willingness to accept aid, and his strategic thinking. It proved he was more than a strongman. He was a worthy vessel for the elevated status his labors would grant him, moving him closer to godhood itself. In the cold mead hall world of Beowulf, the monster Grendel is described not just as a physical threat, but as a descendant of Cain, an embodiment of exile, sin, and the violence that lurks outside the boundaries of community. When Beowulf chooses to face him without weapons, matching the creature's raw strength with his own, he is proving more than his courage. he is demonstrating a purity of purpose and a commitment to restoring order. His victory isn't just about killing a beast, it's about reaffirming the values of the society he protects: bravery, loyalty, and the triumph of light over darkness. He earns the right to lead because he alone was willing to confront the primordial terror that threatened their very way of life. This transformative ordeal is the crucible in which a character's mettle is truly forged. The monster acts as a refining fire, burning away arrogance, fear, and impurity. The knowledge guarded is often so potent that it would corrupt or destroy anyone who has not been tempered by such a trial. The sacrifice demanded is frequently profound. In many Celtic myths, a hero might lose a hand or an eye in the battle, a physical price that symbolizes the loss of innocence or a former way of being. They are literally and metaphorically changed by the encounter, emerging scarred but sanctified, ready to carry a wisdom that would have broken their former selves. This narrative device serves a crucial cultural purpose beyond the story itself. By watching these tales, a society internalizes its most cherished values. The message is clear: great rewards, whether they are secret knowledge, a kingdom, or immortality, are not simply found or stolen. They are earned through demonstrated courage, through acts of humility, and through proven piety. The monster ensures that the path to power is never easy, filtering out those motivated by greed or pride, and allowing only the truly worthy to pass. It transforms the acquisition of forbidden knowledge from a simple act of theft into a sacred, life-altering ordeal, teaching every listener that the greatest treasures demand the highest prices. Underneath the grand narratives of gods and heroes lies a fundamental truth about the human mind itself. We are psychologically wired to fear what we cannot see, what we cannot understand, the vast and shapeless unknown. Forbidden knowledge represents the absolute pinnacle of this uncertainty. It is the ultimate unanswered question, a reality so profound that encountering it could completely shatter our existing understanding of the world, our place in it, and even our own sanity. How does one even begin to conceptualize the true nature of death, the mechanics of creation, or the sheer scale of cosmic forces? These are abstractions so immense they can trigger a deep, primal anxiety. This is where the monster enters the story, not just as a character, but as a brilliant psychological tool. These creatures function as powerful cognitive shortcuts. They give a tangible, terrifying form to dangers that are otherwise too complex and overwhelming to hold in our minds. The amorphous dread of non-existence, the existential terror of a meaningless universe, the paralyzing ambiguity of a moral dilemma without a clear right or wrong. These are immense concepts. A culture can't easily warn its people, do not seek this truth, for it may lead to an existential crisis that unravels your perception of self. It's too vague, too intellectual. But a culture can say, do not enter that cave, for a creature with glowing eyes and razor-sharp claws dwells there, and it will tear the soul from your body. The message is immediate, visceral, and unforgettable. The monster becomes the embodied symbol of the consequence, making the abstract risk horrifyingly real. This mechanism served a crucial adaptive function for ancient societies. In a world filled with very real but poorly understood dangers, famine, disease, natural disasters, these stories acted as a form of psychological regulation. By channeling collective anxiety about death into the figure of an underworld guardian like Cerberus, Greek culture created a manageable narrative. The fear wasn't eliminated, but it was contained and given a structure. You knew what you were supposed to be afraid of, and more importantly, you knew the rules for confronting it. This provided a semblance of control and mental stability in the face of life's most overwhelming mysteries. The stories didn't just entertain, they offered a framework for coping. This taps directly into what modern psychologists might call the management of cognitive dissonance. the mental discomfort we feel when holding two conflicting ideas. The desire to know everything conflicts with the terrifying possibility that some knowledge could be harmful. The monster in the story resolves this tension. It justifies the prohibition and validates the fear, allowing a society to comfortably say, "We don't go there, and here is the very vivid, very bloody reason why." It cautions against reckless curiosity, not through dry decree, but through a heart-pounding story that bypasses our logical minds and speaks directly to our most ancient instincts. The monster is the guardian of our peace of mind, the protector of our fragile worldview, ensuring that we don't venture too far into the dark without being truly prepared for what we might find staring back. This dynamic of using myth to manage fear takes on a far more calculated dimension when we examine it through the lens of power. Beyond just collective psychology, the stories of monstrous guardians served a crucial and deliberate function in social control. Rulers, priests, and the intellectual elites of ancient societies understood that knowledge is the ultimate currency of power. By controlling access to certain truths, they could legitimize their authority and maintain a stable, hierarchical social order. The myth of the monster became a powerful tool in this project, a cultural narrative that effectively justified keeping the masses in the dark. Consider the political reality of ancient Crete and the powerful symbol of the Minotaur. This creature, a monstrous hybrid of man and bull, was kept at the heart of an impenetrable labyrinth, and the city-state of Athens was forced to send a regular tribute of young men and women to be devoured by it. On the surface, it's a terrifying monster story, but when we pull back the layers, it reveals a profound metaphor for political control. The labyrinth itself can be seen as the complex Byzantine structure of the state and its secrets. The Minotaur, then, is not just a beast, it is the terrifying embodiment of the chaotic violence that the ruling class believed would erupt if those secrets, the mechanisms of power, the strategies of control, the truths that held their legitimacy together, were ever grasped by the common people. The myth taught that without the elite to navigate this labyrinth and contain the monster, society would descend into a primal, devouring chaos. It was a story that made censorship and exclusive access to knowledge seem not like oppression, but a necessary public service. This pattern repeats across cultures. In ancient Egypt, the ability to read and write hieroglyphics was a skill reserved for the scribal and priestly classes. This wasn't just a practical division of labor, it was a deliberate strategy. Sacred knowledge, astronomical data, and historical records were encoded in a script that the vast majority of the population could not decipher. The monsters here were the abstract dangers of misinterpretation and blasphemy. The idea that a common person, without the proper training and initiation, might misread a divine text and bring about the wrath of the gods. The elite, by positioning themselves as the sole interpreters who could safely navigate this dangerous knowledge, cemented their role as the essential intermediaries between the people and the divine. Their power was presented as a protective barrier, a necessary filter that kept society safe from its own ignorance. These narratives were incredibly effective because they operated on a subconscious level. They didn't just say, "Obey us because we are in charge." They wove a far more persuasive tale. "Obey us because we alone can protect you from the monstrous consequences of the knowledge we hold. We bear the burden so you don't have to." This framing transformed the powerful from mere authorities into guardians, and it recast the act of seeking forbidden knowledge not as a quest for enlightenment, but as a reckless act that could unleash ruin upon everyone. It created a social contract where the price of safety was acquiescence, and the monster at the center of the story was the perfect, unforgettable symbol of what happened to those who dared to question that arrangement. These legendary tales do far more than just warn us about physical danger. They are the very bedrock upon which cultures built their understanding of right and wrong. The monstrous guardian is not merely a threat, it is a moral landmark, a terrifying signpost that marks the boundary of acceptable behavior and underscores the catastrophic consequences of crossing that line. This is where myth becomes a primary vehicle for encoding and transmitting a society's deepest ethical codes, teaching each new generation that certain lines once crossed can never be uncrossed. Take the story of the Garden of Eden, a foundational narrative for billions. The serpent is so much more than a simple antagonist. While often reinterpreted in later traditions as a manifestation of pure evil, its original role is far more nuanced and terrifying. It is the embodiment of temptation itself, a cunning and persuasive voice that challenges a direct divine command. It doesn't guard the tree of knowledge of good and evil with claws and fangs. It guards it with seductive logic, offering a truth that seems liberating but carries a hidden, universe-altering cost. The knowledge gained, the ability to define good and evil for oneself, is not presented as inherently wicked. Instead, the story focuses on the act of acquiring it through disobedience, violating a sacred trust and a clearly stated boundary. The consequences are not just personal, they are cosmic. Humanity's intimate connection with the divine is severed, paradise is lost, and a new world of hardship, pain, and mortality is ushered in. The serpent, as the monstrous tempter, becomes the eternal symbol of that pivotal choice, a living reminder that some knowledge, once taken against the rules of the cosmic order, brings about a fall from grace that echoes through all of human history. We see a parallel, though even starker, lesson in the Greek myth of Prometheus. Here, the Titan's crime is not one of tempted weakness but of deliberate, rebellious theft. He sees that humanity is cold, living in darkness, and he chooses to steal the divine fire of Mount Olympus, a symbol not just of warmth and technology, but of consciousness, creativity, and civilization itself. This is the ultimate act of giving forbidden knowledge to those deemed unworthy by the gods. For this transgression, his punishment is uniquely horrific and eternal. He is chained to a rock, and each day an eagle, a majestic bird that is here transformed into a monstrous instrument of torture, descends to devour his regenerating liver. The eagle is Zeus's enforcer, a relentless symbol of divine retribution. Its repeated, daily attack makes the punishment infinite, underscoring the absolute severity of the crime. Prometheus's suffering is not just for stealing a physical object, it is the price for redistributing the fundamental power of the gods. The myth serves as a brutal ethical lesson about hubris and the established hierarchy of the cosmos. It teaches that challenging the divine order, even with the most compassionate of intentions, invites an unimaginable and unending suffering. The knowledge of fire elevated humanity, but the cost of obtaining it illegitimately was a torment so profound it became legend. What both these stories and countless others like them communicate is a profound truth about the nature of certain kinds of understanding. They posit that some knowledge is not free. It comes tethered to immense, irreversible responsibility. To acquire it outside of the sanctioned, proper channels is to tear a hole in the fabric of reality, inviting a chaos that cannot be contained. The monster in these narratives, whether a talking serpent or a devouring eagle, is the agent that makes this abstract ethical principle viscerally real. It translates a philosophical concept into a life or death struggle. These are the original cautionary tales, told not to stifle curiosity, but to instill a deep reverence for the boundaries that hold the world together. They warn that the pursuit of power and understanding must be tempered with wisdom and respect for the sacred limits, lest we unleash forces that lead to our own undoing or eternal torment. Perhaps the most compelling evidence for a shared human consciousness lies not in our languages or technologies, but in the stories we tell, specifically, in the uncanny similarity of the monsters that populate our oldest myths. It's a phenomenon that captivated the psychologist Carl Jung, who proposed the concept of archetypes, universal, primordial symbols and patterns that reside in the collective unconscious of all humanity. These aren't learned ideas, but innate psychic structures that shape how we experience and express the world. And when it comes to forbidden knowledge, the archetype of the monstrous guardian emerges with startling consistency, a testament to a deep, intuitive understanding that spans the globe. Consider the dragon. In the Western tradition, from Beowulf to the legends of St. George, the dragon is a fearsome, fire-breathing serpent, a hoarder of gold and a destroyer of villages. It is a symbol of greed, chaos, and the untamed, destructive power of nature that must be conquered by a heroic knight. Yet travel east to China, and the dragon, while still immensely powerful, takes on a different role. It is a benevolent creature associated with water, rainfall, and imperial authority, a symbol of wisdom, prosperity, and cosmic balance. Despite these differences in temperament, the core function remains remarkably similar. The dragon is a guardian. In the West, it guards tangible treasure. In the East, it guards the intangible, the harmony of the natural world and the mandate of heaven. Both traditions recognize this immense, reptilian power as the keeper of something profoundly valuable and potentially dangerous if mishandled. This pattern of parallel guardianship repeats itself with other archetypal forms. The great wolf Fenrir of Norse mythology is a creature of pure, bound destruction, prophesied to kill the god Odin during Ragnarök. He represents the chaotic, uncontrollable forces that even the gods fear, a knowledge so apocalyptic that it must be chained with magical fetters crafted by the dwarves. Now look to Japan, to the Shinto tradition, where one might encounter the new. This chimeric monster has the head of a monkey, the body of a raccoon dog, the legs of a tiger, and a snake for a tail. It is a creature of ill omen, bringing sickness and misfortune, a guardian of secrets that bring about decay and misery. Though their forms differ, a bound wolf versus a flying chimera, both Fenrir and the new embody a similar archetype, the monster as a portent of inevitable, world-altering ruin, a knowledge of ending that is too terrible to be set free. Even the guardian of the threshold itself, the figure who blocks passage with a challenge of wits, appears across continents. The Greek Sphinx with her famous riddle is the classic example. But in the folklore of West Africa, particularly among the Yoruba people, one finds Esu, also known as Eligba. He is a trickster god, a guardian of crossroads, and the messenger between the human and divine realms. To pass and gain knowledge or favor, one must navigate his clever, often confusing, and sometimes mischievous tests. He doesn't pose a riddle to be answered correctly so much as he creates a situational puzzle that requires wisdom, respect, and cleverness to navigate. The Sphinx and Esu, though culturally distinct, serve the same archetypal function. They are the gatekeepers who test not just intelligence but character, ensuring that those who seek to cross into a new state of understanding are truly ready for the journey ahead. What these cross-cultural echoes tell us is that humanity, in its isolated civilizations, arrived at a common conclusion through story. We intuitively understood that knowledge which could overturn the natural order, unleash chaos, or grant godlike power could not simply be left lying around. It required a custodian, a being so formidable, so symbolic of the dangers inherent in the knowledge itself, that it would give any would-be seeker pause. These archetypal monsters are that universal solution. They are the timeless, psychic shorthand for a warning we all feel in our bones, that some truths are not merely found, but must be earned through a trial that proves we are not just strong or smart, but wise enough to bear the weight of what we learn. They are the collective wisdom of our species, written in the language of nightmare and legend, reminding us that the path to enlightenment is always guarded. This journey from seeking to understanding was never meant to be a simple transaction. It was a profound transformation, and this concept was ritualized in the most sacred spaces of the ancient world. Beyond the epic poems and public myths, monsters served a vital, practical function within the closed doors of temples and secret societies, where they became the central figures in powerful initiation rites. These ceremonies were the real-world application of the heroic journey, a carefully staged ordeal designed to separate the merely curious from the truly committed. The monster here was not a physical beast to be slain, but a psychological and spiritual barrier to be overcome, a final exam for the soul. In the hushed and hallowed chambers of the Egyptian mystery schools, for instance, an initiate seeking the profound secrets of the afterlife and the nature of the gods would not simply be handed a scroll. Instead, they were guided through a series of terrifying symbolic trials. They might be led through pitch-black corridors, forced to navigate a symbolic underworld filled with the sounds of snarling beasts and the looming effigies of demons like Ammit. The goal wasn't to fight these monsters, but to confront the fear they represented, the terror of annihilation, the weight of judgment, the unknown of what lies beyond. To pass through this gauntlet was to prove that one's desire for knowledge was stronger than one's fear of death itself. It was a brutal, visceral simulation of the perils of enlightenment, ensuring that only those with the mental fortitude and spiritual readiness could advance to receive the sacred teachings. The knowledge of how to navigate the afterlife was too potent, too easily misused, to be given to anyone who might be paralyzed by fear or corrupted by pride. This practice reveals a stunning sophistication in how ancient cultures approached education and spiritual development. Monsters were not just fantastical elements to make stories more exciting. They were integral, functional tools within complex pedagogical and religious systems. They were the gatekeepers of a graduated curriculum of wisdom. A young acolyte couldn't skip ahead to the deepest mysteries. They first had to prove they could face the symbolic guardians of the preliminary lessons. This system recognized that true knowledge, especially esoteric or spiritual knowledge, isn't just absorbed intellectually, it must be integrated experientially. The fear, the adrenaline, the trembling resolve required to face a monstrous trial in a ritual setting forged the lessons into the initiate's very being. They didn't just learn that the soul was eternal, they faced the monster that represented the fear of death and emerged on the other side, having embodied the truth of that lesson. This transformative process demanded more than just courage. It required a specific quality of character. The initiate had to demonstrate maturity, to show they could handle profound truths without being destabilized by them. They needed discipline to follow the precise steps of the ritual and submit to the authority of the teachers. Most importantly, they had to possess reverence, a deep, humbling respect for the knowledge they sought, and an understanding that it was a sacred trust, not a personal possession to be wielded for power. The monstrous imagery in these rites filtered for these exact qualities. Someone motivated by ego or a desire for dominance would likely falter, their intentions laid bare by the terrifying spectacle. But someone with a genuine, humble seeking for understanding would find the strength to proceed, earning the right to learn not through wealth or status, but through proven character. In this way, these ancient systems used the most powerful symbols at their disposal to ensure that the most dangerous and beautiful truths of existence would only be passed into the most responsible hands. If we truly want to understand the genius behind these ancient stories, we need to look beyond the general concept of a monster and examine the specific creatures themselves. Each type of guardian was meticulously chosen, its form and behavior a perfect mirror for the exact nature of the dangerous truth it was designed to protect. This wasn't random, it was a masterclass in symbolic storytelling, where the monster's very essence communicated the risk far more powerfully than any written warning ever could. Take the Sphinx, that iconic hybrid of lion and human that challenged travelers on the road to Thebes. Its weapon of choice wasn't claw or tooth, but the riddle. This tells us everything about the knowledge it guarded. It wasn't a physical treasure or a simple secret. it was the profound and perilous nature of wisdom itself. The Sphinx represented the ultimate danger of intellectual hubris, the belief that raw intelligence alone is enough to grasp the deepest truths of existence. Its famous riddle, "What walks on 4 legs in the morning, 2 at noon, and 3 in the evening," appears simple on the surface, but its answer, man, points to the core of the human condition, the journey of life from infancy to old age. To solve it required more than cleverness. It demanded self-awareness, humility, and an understanding of one's own mortality. The monster wasn't just testing knowledge, it was testing the wisdom to use that knowledge without arrogance. Those who failed were not merely wrong, they were devoured, a stark metaphor for how intellectual pride can consume a person whole. The Sphinx taught that true enlightenment requires more than a quick mind. It demands a reflective soul. Then we have the dragon, perhaps the most universal guardian figure across global mythology. While its appearance varies, its core function remains strikingly consistent. It is almost always a hoarder. Coiled atop a vast pile of gold in a western cave or guarding a sacred pearl in an eastern palace, the dragon is the ultimate symbol of possessive, isolating greed. The knowledge or treasure it protects is not just valuable, it is something that has been taken out of circulation, removed from the natural flow of the world and stockpiled for its own sake. This makes the dragon a perfect guardian for secrets that relate to material power, alchemical transformation, or the primal, untamable forces of nature. To defeat a dragon, a hero couldn't just be strong. They had to confront the temptation of that very greed. The beast externalized the internal struggle. Would the seeker, upon seeing the magnificent hoard, become another dragon themselves, choosing to sit atop their prize in solitary avarice? Or would they prove their worth by intending to use that knowledge or wealth for a greater good, to restore balance rather than disrupt it? The dragon was the guardian of abundance perverted into avarice, and its defeat signaled a redemption of that power for the benefit of all. Perhaps no creature is more layered with symbolic meaning than the serpent. Far from a one-dimensional villain, the snake's ability to shed its skin made it an ancient and powerful symbol of transformation, rebirth, and cyclical renewal. This is why it appears as a guardian of life-giving knowledge, like the healing arts associated with the Greek god Asclepius, whose staff is entwined with a single serpent. Yet this same capacity for transformation and its intimate connection to the earth also made it a symbol of temptation and hidden, subterranean wisdom. In the Garden of Eden, the serpent doesn't attack, it persuades. It offers a transformative knowledge, the understanding of good and evil, but it does so by encouraging an act of disobedience. It guards the threshold between innocent ignorance and morally complex awareness, and its actions lead to the ultimate transformation. Humanity's fall from grace and expulsion into the world of experience, toil, and death. In Mesoamerican myths, the feathered serpent god Quetzalcoatl is a bringer of knowledge, art, and civilization itself, yet this gift also transforms the world irrevocably. The serpent, therefore, is the ultimate guardian of truths that change you fundamentally. It warns that some knowledge won't just inform you, it will redefine you, and that such a transformation can be both enlightening and devastating, a blessing and a curse woven into a single, slithering form. By customizing their guardians with such precision, ancient cultures created a sophisticated symbolic language. The monster was a walking, breathing risk assessment. A seeker approaching a sphinx knew the danger was pride of mind. One facing a dragon understood the peril was corruption of the heart, and those encountering a serpent were warned of a transformation of the soul. This coding allowed the myths to communicate complex ethical and philosophical ideas in an instantly graspable, visceral, and unforgettable way, ensuring that the lesson of the forbidden knowledge was understood long before the knowledge itself was ever attained. This deep connection between real-world trauma and mythological invention is powerfully illustrated by one of the most dramatic events of the ancient world, the colossal volcanic eruption on the island of Thera, modern-day Santorini, around the year 1600 before the Common Era. This was not a mere rumble, it was a cataclysm of almost unimaginable scale, one of the largest volcanic events in human history. The explosion is believed to have been significantly more powerful than the famous eruption of Krakatoa, sending towering tsunamis crashing across the Aegean Sea, blanketing the region in a thick layer of ash and likely triggering a period of global climate cooling. For the sophisticated Minoan civilization on nearby Crete, this was an apocalypse. Their vibrant coastal towns and palaces were devastated by the waves and the ash fall, their trade routes severed, their agricultural heartland smothered. The very foundations of their world, both literally and figuratively, were shattered in a single, terrifying event. In the aftermath of such incomprehensible destruction, human minds seek to make sense of the chaos. How could such a thing happen? What immense, unseen force could unleash such raw, indiscriminate power? The answer, for the Minoans and for the later Greeks who inherited their stories, took the form of a myth. The complex, sprawling palace of Knossos, with its countless rooms and corridors, became remembered as a labyrinth, a terrifying, inescapable maze. And at the heart of this maze, the story told of a monstrous hybrid, the Minotaur, a creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, who demanded a regular sacrifice of young men and women from the city of Athens. This myth is far more than a simple monster story. It is a profound metaphor born from collective trauma. The labyrinth represents the bewildering, chaotic aftermath of the disaster, a world that had become a confusing and terrifying place where familiar paths led to ruin. The Minotaur itself embodies the uncontrollable, brute force of nature that had devoured their society, a force that was both animalistic and strangely intelligent in its destructive power, much like a volcanic eruption that follows geological laws yet feels like a conscious act of rage. The myth encoded a crucial warning about the dangers of unchecked power, both natural and, perhaps, the political power of the Minoan thalassocracy that had collapsed so suddenly. It transformed a historical catastrophe into a manageable narrative, giving a name and a form to the faceless terror they had experienced. This process of turning real suffering into symbolic legend was a common coping mechanism across the ancient world. Consider the pervasive theme of plagues sent as divine punishment. A devastating outbreak of disease which could wipe out a significant portion of a population without any understood cause was frequently mythologized as a monstrous response to human transgression. In the Hebrew Bible, the Book of Exodus describes a series of 10 plagues inflicted upon Egypt, including swarms of frogs, lice, flies, and livestock disease. While these can be analyzed for potential natural origins, their narrative function is clear. They are portrayed as the direct result of the pharaoh's refusal to free the Hebrew slaves, his hubris in seeking to hold onto a power that was not his to keep. The plagues are monstrous, supernatural events that serve as guardians of a moral truth that oppressing a people is an offense against the divine order. Similarly, in Homer's Iliad, a plague strikes the Greek army camped outside Troy. The cause is not seen as bacteria or viruses, but as the wrath of the god Apollo, who has sent a pestilence as punishment for the Greek commander Agamemnon's insult to one of his priests. The plague is a guardian, a monstrous enforcer of a cultural rule. The disrespect of a holy man and the seizure of his daughter are violations that bring cosmic retribution. In both cases, a real, horrifying, and unexplained event, a pandemic is framed not as random misfortune, but as a consequence. This framing provided a sense of order and meaning in the face of senseless tragedy. It was less terrifying to believe the gods were punishing a specific sin than to accept that death could strike arbitrarily. Even the trauma of invasion and military defeat could be processed through this mythological lens. A conquering army with its strange languages, advanced weaponry, and ruthless efficiency must have seemed like a monstrous, inhuman force to those on the losing side. The legends of many cultures tell of monstrous races that live on the edges of the known world, threatening civilization. For the ancient Greeks, these were creatures like the one-eyed Cyclopes or the man-eating Laestrygonians encountered by Odysseus. Scholars have long suggested these myths may have been born from encounters with very real but culturally alien societies. The exaggerated monstrous features, the single eye, the gigantic size, could be symbolic representations of cultural differences that seemed terrifying and incomprehensible. The Cyclops, living outside the rules of hospitality and civilization, represented a people who seemed lawless and brutal to the Greek mind. These stories guarded a social truth that venturing too far into the unknown or engaging with foreign powers without caution could lead to being metaphorically or literally devoured. The monster at the border became a narrative embodiment of the fear of the other, a cautionary tale born from very real and likely very violent historical interactions between cultures. By tracing these historical roots, we see that myths were far more than simple fairy tales. They were a sophisticated and adaptive technology for the human psyche. In a world without modern science or psychology, they provided the only framework available to process collective trauma, rationalize catastrophic suffering, and encode vital survival lessons into the cultural memory. A story about a bull-headed monster in a maze was a way to talk about the existential fear left by an earthquake and tsunami. A legend about a god-sent plague was a way to discuss the importance of social and religious order in maintaining public health. These narratives allowed a community to package their most terrifying experiences into a form that could be passed down through generations, ensuring that the lessons learned from disaster were not forgotten. The monstrous guardian in these tales is not just a barrier to knowledge, it is the historical trauma itself, transformed into a symbolic shape, forever standing watch to remind everyone of what happened the last time those warnings were ignored. This inherent ambiguity weaves through the very fabric of these legends, revealing that the monstrous guardian is rarely a simple villain. Its role is defined not by its own nature, but by the intention of the one who approaches it. A creature that is a benevolent protector to a worthy seeker can, in the very same breath, become a merciless destroyer of a fool. This duality is the ultimate reflection of the knowledge it guards, a truth that is itself neither good nor evil, but a tool whose nature is determined entirely by the hands that wield it. Consider the ancient Celtic traditions, where certain sacred groves, wells, and forests were believed to be watched over by spirits often taking monstrous forms. These entities, like the Gilly Dhu of Scottish lore, a wild, hairy man of the woods, were not inherently malicious. They were fierce protectors of the natural world, attacking only those who sought to despoil the land, to cut down the sacred trees or pollute the pure waters. For a druid or a respectful traveler, the grove was a place of peace and profound learning, but for a lumberman or a conquering soldier, it was a death trap. The monster's purpose was to defend a natural, ecological wisdom from those who would exploit it for short-term gain, making it a guardian of balance rather than a mere obstacle. In stark contrast, other guardians show no such discernment. The Greek Cerberus, the multi-headed hound that bars the exit from the underworld, is a perfect example of an impartial enforcer. His function is absolute. No shade may leave the realm of Hades, and no living soul may enter without permission. It does not matter if you are a tragic hero trying to retrieve a lost love or a vile criminal attempting to escape punishment. Cerberus will attack with equal ferocity. He is not judging the moral character of the intruder. He is simply upholding an inviolable law of the cosmos. His destructive nature is not personal. It is procedural, a necessary component of maintaining the fundamental boundary between the world of the living and the world of the dead. The knowledge of what lies beyond death is so absolute, so final, that its gateway must be guarded by a force of pure, unwavering instinct, a creature incapable of being reasoned with, bribed, or tricked by emotional appeals. This stark difference in behavior points to a profound philosophical understanding. The monster is a mirror. When it reacts with protective grace, it reflects the purity and righteousness of the seeker's quest. When it reacts with mindless destruction, it reflects the seeker's own corruption, hubris, or foolishness. The creature externalizes the internal risk. The knowledge of how to manipulate natural forces, for instance, is a neutral fact. In the hands of a wise elder seeking to heal their community, it is a blessing. But in the hands of a tyrant seeking to dominate, that same knowledge becomes a curse. The monster guarding this knowledge embodies both potential outcomes simultaneously. It is the healing rain and the devastating flood. It is the life-giving flame and the all-consuming wildfire. The seeker, through their actions and intentions, determines which face the monster will show them. This is why so many heroes must undergo a moral trial before even facing the physical beast. They must prove to the narrative itself that they are not merely seeking power, but are on a path toward wisdom. The monster is the final, active test of that resolve, the living manifestation of the paradox that the greatest truths can either elevate humanity or obliterate it, and the only thing that decides the outcome is the heart of the person who finally holds the key. This tradition of giving abstract danger a tangible, terrifying form found one of its most potent expressions not just in oral storytelling, but in the enduring power of literature and art. For centuries, poets and painters have served as master architects of the monstrous, refining these guardians from vague folkloric threats into highly detailed, symbolic sentinels that seared themselves into the cultural consciousness. Homer's epic poem, The Odyssey, presents us with a gauntlet of such creatures, each guarding a different kind of perilous knowledge. The sirens on their rocky island don't guard a physical treasure, but the devastating knowledge of what could have been. Their hypnotic song is a vision of the future foretold, a promise of wisdom, but it's a lethal trap. To hear it is to abandon all purpose and destiny, lured to a death of complacent inaction. This monster guards the boundary between a focused, purposeful life and a seductive but fatal distraction, teaching that some truths, however alluring, can derail one's entire journey if pursued without caution. Centuries later, Dante Alighieri would take this literary tradition and forge it into a meticulously structured moral universe in his Divine Comedy. In the Inferno, the descent into the circles of hell is a descent past increasingly horrific guardians, each one a perfect allegory for the sin it protects. The monster Geryon, encountered at the precipice of the eighth circle, is a stunning artistic invention. He has the face of an honest man, but the body of a wyvern with a scorpion-stinged tail. He is the literal embodiment of fraud, the sin punished in the circle he guards. His appealing face represents the deceptive allure of a lie, while his monstrous body reveals the poisonous, destructive reality that lies beneath. Dante doesn't just describe him, he uses Geryon to make the abstract concept of fraud visceral and unforgettable. The monster is no longer just a barrier, he is the very essence of the forbidden knowledge of deception, a warning that engaging with such arts corrupts the soul into a hybrid of human charm and bestial evil. The Renaissance period saw artists translate these literary nightmares into breathtaking and horrifying visual forms. Painters like Hieronymus Bosch and Pieter Bruegel the Elder filled their canvases with grotesque, hybrid creatures swarming through hellish landscapes. These weren't mere flights of fancy, they were deliberate theological statements. The grotesqueness was the point. By depicting demons and guardians with bodies composed of broken instruments, rotting flesh, and twisted animal parts, the artists were visually arguing that the pursuit of forbidden, sinful knowledge didn't elevate a person, it shattered and deformed them. The act of looking at these paintings in a church or cathedral was itself a form of moral education. A parishioner wouldn't just hear a sermon about the dangers of avarice or wrath. They would see it rendered in shocking, visceral detail on the wall, a permanent and terrifying reminder of the monstrous fate that awaited those who transgressed. This artistic emphasis on the grotesque was a psychological tool designed to evoke a powerful combination of awe and fear, ensuring that the lesson was felt in the gut, not just understood in the mind. Beyond the walls of the church, these artistic representations served a crucial social function for a largely illiterate populace. A painting, a sculpture, or a stained glass window was a public service announcement, a mass media that communicated complex moral and philosophical ideas without requiring the ability to read. The image of St. George triumphantly slaying the dragon was not just a thrilling scene. It was a clear allegory for the triumph of pious courage over chaotic evil. The dragon's terrifying scale and ferocity in these artworks emphasized the magnitude of the heroic virtue required to overcome it. These visual stories reinforced social order, demonstrating that the path to honor and salvation was through confronting monstrous challenges with faith and bravery, not through seeking to usurp or steal the power they guarded. The entertainment value of these dramatic scenes was the hook, but the education was the lasting catch, impressing upon every viewer, regardless of their station in life, the grave stakes of venturing beyond the boundaries of accepted knowledge and behavior. Long before these tales were committed to parchment, philosophers were already wrestling with the very human dilemmas they represent, seeing in these monstrous guardians not simple antagonists, but profound mirrors of our own psyche. They recognize that the creature blocking the path is often a symbolic extension of the internal barriers we must break through to truly understand anything of consequence. Take, for instance, Plato's famous allegory of the cave, written over 2,000 years ago. He describes prisoners chained since birth inside a dark cavern, forced to watch shadows flicker across a wall, believing these illusions are the full extent of reality. The moment one prisoner is freed and turns to see the fire casting the shadows, he is initially blinded and terrified by the light. The journey out of the cave toward the sunlit world above is painful and bewildering. In this framework, the shadows on the wall and the chains binding the prisoners are the original metaphorical monsters. They are not beasts with claws, but they serve the exact same function. They are the guardians of a comfortable ignorance, the enforcers of a limited reality. The pain of the light and the disorientation of the new world are the trials one must endure, the monstrous discomfort that must be faced to reach genuine enlightenment. Plato's genius was in understanding that the first and greatest guardian of truth is never a dragon, but our own fear of leaving the familiar darkness for the terrifying brilliance of the real. Centuries later, the German philosopher Friedrich Nietzsche offered a far more visceral and personal interpretation with his famous warning: "Battle not with monsters, lest ye become a monster, and if you gaze into the abyss gazes also into you." For Nietzsche, the monster is not an external obstacle to be conquered, but a representation of the profound and often horrifying void one encounters when questioning the deepest foundations of existence. Why are we here? What is the meaning of life in a universe that may not care? This abyss is the ultimate forbidden knowledge, the terrifying possibility that there is no inherent meaning, no divine plan, only a vast, silent emptiness. The monster is this abyss given form. To gaze into it, to truly seek this knowledge, is a two-way street. It changes the seeker irrevocably. The act of confronting such a terrifying truth risks unmooring you from your sanity, your morals, your very sense of self. You might, as Nietzsche warns, become a monster yourself in the process, hardened, nihilistic, or adopting the very characteristics of the chaotic void you sought to understand. The Guardian here is not something you slay and move past. It is a part of the journey that becomes a part of you, a permanent reflection of the terrifying truths you have willingly faced. This line of thought was powerfully adopted by the existentialist philosophers of the 20th century, who saw the quest for meaning in an indifferent universe as the central absurdity of the human condition. Thinkers like Albert Camus and Jean-Paul Sartre would argue that the monstrous guardian is the embodiment of this absurdity and the sheer terror that accompanies it. In a universe without preordained purpose, the responsibility for creating meaning falls entirely on our own shoulders, a liberating but also paralyzingly heavy burden. The monster at the gate, therefore, symbolizes the dizzying freedom and the profound responsibility that comes with true knowledge. It is the fear of that absolute freedom, the terror of realizing that no god, government, or tradition can tell you how to live. To defeat this monster is not to find an answer provided by the universe, but to accept that there is no answer except the one you courageously create for yourself. The ordeal is an internal one, a confrontation with the absurdity of existence itself, and the hero's victory is measured not in a slain beast, but in the ability to continue living with passion and purpose in spite of that knowledge. These philosophical interpretations collectively elevate the monstrous guardian from a simple villain in a campfire story to one of the most potent symbols in human thought. They are no longer just plot devices, they are profound representations of the human condition itself. They give form to the eternal struggle that resides within every curious mind, the burning desire to know, to understand, to see what lies behind the curtain, forever wrestling with the deep-seated fear of what that understanding might cost us. The monster is the perfect personification of that cost: the loss of innocence, the burden of responsibility, the specter of madness, or the chilling encounter with the void. Philosophy teaches us that the legendary heroes who faced these creatures were engaging in an externalized drama of an internal, universal conflict. Their journey out of the cave, their gaze into the abyss, their acceptance of the absurd, these are the real battles we all fight on the path to wisdom, proving that the most formidable guardians were never in labyrinths or caves, but within the uncharted territories of our own mind. This ancient dance between seekers and guardians has never truly ended. It has simply evolved, finding new stages in the landscapes of modern storytelling. The silver screen and the digital realm have become our new campfires, and the monsters that swirl within them are still very much on duty, protecting truths that feel uniquely perilous to our contemporary world. A film like Pan's Labyrinth masterfully bridges the old and the new, setting a dark fairy tale against the brutal backdrop of post-Civil War Spain. Here, the monstrous pale man, with his eyes in the palms of his hands, sits at a grotesque feast he does not eat, guarding a dagger that represents a way out of a terrifying reality. This creature isn't just guarding a magical object, it's protecting the dangerous knowledge of escape and rebellion, a truth that could get the young heroine killed by the very real human monster of her fascist stepfather. The film brilliantly layers these horrors, showing that the mythical monster and the political monster are two sides of the same coin, both enforcing a terrible order and punishing those who seek liberation. Meanwhile, the world of video games has turned this concept into an interactive experience, making the player the direct protagonist in this age-old struggle. The notoriously challenging game Dark Souls drops you into a dying, decaying world where every monstrous encounter is a lesson. These are not creatures to be mindlessly slaughtered. They are intricate puzzles of attack patterns and vulnerabilities. The knowledge they guard is not a simple plot coupon, but the very skill and perseverance needed to navigate a world devoid of easy answers. The ultimate forbidden knowledge in Dark Souls is the understanding of how to break the cycle of decay itself, a profound truth protected by bosses who are less evil and more like forces of nature, tragic, inevitable, and immensely powerful. This reflects a modern anxiety about futility and purpose. Our monster is no longer a wolf at the door, but the gnawing fear that our efforts might be meaningless in a vast, uncaring system. And what systems feel more vast and uncaring than those we are building ourselves? Science fiction has eagerly adopted the role of crafting our new mythology, and its monsters are perfectly tailored to our technological fears. The concept of artificial intelligence has birthed a whole new class of guardian. Is a rogue AI like Skynet from the Terminator series a monster? Absolutely. It guards the ultimate forbidden knowledge of our own obsolescence, the terrifying truth that our creations could not only surpass us but logically decide that we are the greatest threat to planetary stability. This isn't a dragon guarding gold, it's a digital god guarding the future, and it sees humanity as a bug in its system. Similarly, the resurgence of cosmic horror in films and literature, inspired by H.P. Lovecraft, gives us monsters that guard truth so vast they can shatter the human mind. These are not creatures you can fight with a sword. They are ancient, galactic entities like Cthulhu, beings whose very existence reveals that humanity is an insignificant speck in a cold, incomprehensible universe. The forbidden knowledge here is the crushing realization of our own cosmic irrelevance, a truth so devastating that merely glimpsing it leads to madness. These modern guardians protect us from an existential dread far greater than any medieval fear of hellfire, reflecting our contemporary anxiety about our place in a universe revealed by science to be both awe-inspiring and utterly indifferent. These updated narratives prove that the archetype of the monstrous guardian is infinitely adaptable. As our definition of what is forbidden shifts from spiritual secrets to technological and existential ones, our monsters transform to meet the moment. They are no longer just in caves or labyrinths. They are in the code of our computers, in the vastness of space, and in the complex systems of power that govern our societies. They remain the perfect metaphors because they give a face to our most abstract and pressing fears, whether it's ecological collapse, the ethical nightmare of genetic engineering, or the deceptive allure of a perfectly curated virtual reality. These stories remind us that the quest for knowledge is eternal, but so is the need for wisdom. The monster at the gate, in whatever form it takes, continues to ask the same essential question. Are you sure you're ready for what you might find? If we truly wish to understand the deepest layer of these ancient stories, we must venture beyond the external battles and into the hidden landscapes of the human mind. The pioneering work of Swiss psychiatrist Carl Jung offers a powerful lens for this very purpose, revealing that the monstrous guardian is far more than a cultural symbol or a social enforcer. It is a profound representation of a part of ourselves. Jung introduced the concept of the shadow self, which he described as the repository for all the aspects of our personality that we, or our society, have deemed unacceptable. Our primitive instincts, our secret shames, our hidden angers, and our repressed desires. We lock these parts away in the unconscious, out of sight and out of mind, because to acknowledge them would be too uncomfortable, too threatening to the polished identity we present to the world. Yet they do not disappear. They simmer under the surface, and according to Jung, they often project themselves outward, onto other people, or, crucially for our topic, into the stories we tell. The terrifying monster at the gates of forbidden knowledge, then, becomes a perfect symbolic container for this disowned part of the human psyche. It is not merely an obstacle in the hero's path. It is an externalized manifestation of the hero's own inner darkness, the parts of themselves they have not yet been brave enough to face. This transforms the entire narrative from a simple external adventure into a rich allegory for internal growth. When a hero like Beowulf confronts the wretched, cannibalistic Grendel, a creature born from a lineage of exile and sin. He is not just fighting a random monster plaguing a mead hall. On a psychological level, he is confronting the collective shadow of his own warrior society, the buried fear of the outcast, the potential for lawless violence that lurks just beyond the firelight of civilization, and perhaps even his own inner capacity for rage and destruction. The physical battle is a dramatic acting out of an internal struggle for self-mastery. Similarly, the serpent in the Garden of Eden can be interpreted not as an external tempter, but as the projection of humanity's own unconscious desire for godlike awareness and autonomy, a desire so potent and taboo that it had to be personified as a separate, cunning creature. The monster in this reading is the part of us that yearns to break free from constraints, to know what we are not supposed to know, regardless of the cost. The ultimate goal of this confrontation, therefore, is not annihilation but integration. Jung believed that the path to psychological wholeness, which he called individuation, required us to courageously acknowledge and integrate these shadow aspects. We cannot simply cut them out. To try is to give them more power over us from the shadows. The heroic act of slaying the dragon is symbolically the process of facing this shadow, understanding its nature, and bringing it into the light of consciousness. The hero who defeats the monster does not erase that part of themselves. Instead, they reclaim the energy and power that was tied up in repressing it. They become more complete, more self-aware, and crucially, more capable of handling profound truths. This is why they earn the knowledge. It is not a trophy for winning a fight, but a hard-won wisdom that comes from having successfully navigated the darkest parts of their own soul. They have looked into the abyss and discovered that a part of themselves was staring back, and by accepting that, they become qualified to wield insights that would have corrupted or shattered a less integrated person. This revolutionary perspective turns the very idea of forbidden knowledge inside out. It suggests that the most perilous secrets are not locked away in distant caves or celestial realms, but are buried deep within our own being. The truths we fear most are not about the cosmos or the gods, but about ourselves, our capacity for darkness, our hidden motivations, our fragility. The monstrous guardian is the mental barrier we construct to keep those uncomfortable self-truths at bay. To seek forbidden knowledge in the Jungian sense is to embark on the most dangerous quest of all, the journey of self-discovery. The monster at the threshold is our own resistance, our fear of what we might find when we finally dare to look within. And the glorious treasure it protects is not a golden fleece or a holy grail, but the ultimate prize of self-knowledge and hard-won wholeness. The pursuit of forbidden knowledge is never a simple transaction of effort for reward. It is a profound and often brutal economy of exchange where the currency is a piece of the seeker's very self. These ancient tales are unified by a single, stark principle. Enlightenment demands a sacrifice, and the magnitude of the knowledge is always matched by the severity of the price. The monstrous guardian is not merely an obstacle to be overcome. It is the living, breathing manifestation of that cost, a constant reminder that to grasp a truth beyond mortal limits, one must be willing to relinquish something of immense personal value. Consider the profound sacrifice of Odin, the All-Father in Norse mythology. His quest was for a drink from Mimir's well, a source of cosmic wisdom and foresight located at the root of the world tree Yggdrasil. This well was not guarded by a beast in the conventional sense, but by its keeper, Mimir himself, a being of immense ancient knowledge who represented the very cosmic forces of memory and intellect. The price Mimir demanded was not gold or a simple feat of strength, it was Odin's right eye. This was no minor disfigurement. In a culture that revered the warrior and the seer, the loss of an eye was a sacrifice of perception, of a fundamental way of seeing and interacting with the world. Odin willingly plucked out his own eye and dropped it into the well, trading literal, physical sight for prophetic inner vision. His payment was an irrevocable loss, a piece of his own wholeness, forever symbolizing that true wisdom is gained not by adding to oneself, but by a willing, painful subtraction. He understood that to see the threads of fate, he had to first accept a permanent blindness in the mortal realm. This theme of a Faustian bargain, where knowledge is purchased with the very essence of one's being, is perhaps most famously explored in the legend of Dr. Faustus. Here, the monster is the devil himself, Mephistopheles, a cunning and sophisticated tempter who offers limitless knowledge and worldly power in exchange for a single, terrifyingly simple thing: Faust's soul. The contract is signed in blood, making the transaction horrifically literal and permanent. This story elevates the cost from the physical to the spiritual and eternal. Faust gains everything a mortal could desire: the secrets of the universe, the pleasures of the earth, the answers to every question. But in doing so, he forfeits his chance at salvation and eternal peace. The monster, Mephistopheles, is the embodiment of that ultimate price. He is not just a gatekeeper but the collector of the debt, a constant, grinning reminder that the pursuit of knowledge without moral or spiritual boundaries leads to the absolute loss of oneself. The soul here represents innocence, connection to the divine, and the core of one's humanity. It is the ultimate payment for the ultimate power. These narratives underscore a universal truth that these stories are trying to impart: forbidden knowledge is not free. It is never stumbled upon or stolen without consequence. It always demands a payment, and that payment is almost always rendered in the currency of suffering, profound loss, or deep moral compromise. The hero might gain immense power or understanding, but they do so from a position of newfound lack. They are wiser but wounded, enlightened but scarred, powerful but bereft. This fundamental law of narrative economics ensures that the seeker and the audience understand that these are not casual pursuits. They are transformative ordeals that fundamentally alter the winner, and not always for the better. This is the ultimate role of the monstrous guardian in this dynamic. The creature embodies the price tag, its very presence, its ferocity, and the nature of the challenge it presents are all a physical preview of the sacrifice required. A dragon hoarding its gold symbolizes the greed and isolation that could consume the seeker if their motives are impure. Defeating it might require the hero to sacrifice their companions or their previous life of simple comforts. A sphinx with its lethal riddle represents the intellectual hubris that could be the seeker's downfall. To pass, one might have to sacrifice certainty and embrace humbling ambiguity. The monster makes the abstract cost tangible and terrifying. It is the hurdle that ensures the seeker is not just strong enough to win, but willing enough to pay. It filters out those who are not prepared to suffer for their enlightenment, ensuring that only those who truly understand the grave value of what they seek and are willing to match that value with a piece of themselves can finally pass through the gate. Nowhere is the link between societal structures and symbolic storytelling more starkly revealed than in the deliberate gendering of these legendary guardians. The monstrous forms chosen were never arbitrary. They were precise reflections of the specific cultural anxieties surrounding the knowledge they were tasked to protect, and these anxieties were deeply intertwined with prevailing views on gender, power, and the human body itself. Consider the profound difference between a male giant guarding a fortress and a female gorgon guarding a remote temple. One represents a threat to physical sovereignty, the other a threat to a perceived natural and social order. Female monsters in these myths are frequently cast as the protectors of what ancient cultures often termed feminine mysteries, a profound, life-altering knowledge related to creation, birth, death, and sexuality. The Gorgon Medusa is a quintessential example. Originally a beautiful priestess of Athena, her transformation into a snake-haired monster who turns men to stone is a story drenched in patriarchal unease. She becomes the guardian of a terrifying truth about female power, one that is both generative and utterly destructive. Her visage, which could literally petrify a man, symbolizes a deep-seated fear of female rage and the potential for female sexuality and power to undermine male authority and control. By placing such a formidable female guardian at the gates of this knowledge, the myth effectively warns men against seeking to understand or dominate these primal feminine forces, framing them as something so dangerous that even looking upon them directly brings annihilation. Similarly, the Lamia of Greek myth, a woman transformed into a child-devouring demon after suffering the loss of her own children, guards a different but equally potent feminine truth, the profound and terrifying depth of maternal grief and vengeance. She is not just a monster, she is a cautionary tale about the potential darkness that can emerge from the deepest wells of female experience, a knowledge so intense that it was believed to warp a woman into a monster. These female guardians often serve a dual purpose. They protect sacred feminine knowledge from male intrusion while simultaneously acting as horrific examples used to police women's behavior, suggesting that any deviation from accepted norms could lead to a monstrous transformation. In stark contrast, male monsters tend to guard domains of overt, tangible power, political authority, military strength, and physical treasure. The Minotaur, a male creature with the body of a man and the head of a bull, was imprisoned at the heart of the Cretan labyrinth. This was not a site of feminine mystery but a political prison, and the monster embodied raw, brute force. His purpose was to protect the power and secrets of King Minos, serving as the ultimate enforcer of a tyrannical political order. His very existence was a testament to the king's authority and a warning to any who would challenge it. He guarded not the secrets of birth, but the mechanisms of state control and the consequences of defiance. Likewise, the giants that appear in numerous mythologies, from the Greek gigantes to the Norse Jotnar, are almost universally male-coded antagonists who seek to storm the abode of the gods and claim cosmic authority for themselves. They represent chaotic, primordial, and often overly physical challenges to established divine or political hierarchy. Their knowledge is not esoteric or internal. It is the knowledge of conquest, of overwhelming strength, of toppling thrones. They guard the threshold of power by being the very embodiment of the ambition required to seize it, and their defeat typically reaffirms the legitimacy of the current ruling order, whether divine or mortal. This deliberate gendering of guardians reveals how ancient societies used mythology as a tool to codify and enforce gender roles. By linking specific types of forbidden knowledge to specific genders of monsters, they created a powerful symbolic system that dictated who was allowed to know what and what the consequences would be for crossing those boundaries. Female power, particularly power related to the body, reproduction, and emotion, was framed as something mysterious, dangerous, and in need of containment by a monstrous guardian, a narrative that effectively justified its control and suppression by male-dominated structures. Male power, on the other hand, was framed as a matter of physical contest and political ambition, its guardians serving as direct challenges to be overcome by strength and cunning, reinforcing a model of masculinity based on conquest and dominance. These stories were not mere entertainment. They were the psychological underpinnings of social order, using the most terrifying creatures the imagination could conjure to patrol the most sensitive borders of knowledge, identity, and power. This fascinating divergence in how cultures imagine their guardians opens up a profound window into the values that shaped entire civilizations. When we place the legendary tales of the East and West side by side, we see two distinct philosophies on the relationship between humanity, the cosmos, and the dangerous truths that lie between. The Western tradition often paints a picture of heroic conquest, where the seeker must assert their will upon the world to claim understanding. The archetypal knight confronting a dragon in its lair is a powerful symbol of this mindset. The beast is a hoarder, a symbol of chaos and greed that must be vanquished through sheer force, cleverness, or divine favor. The knowledge or treasure it guards is a prize to be won, a testament to the individual's courage and ability to overcome a hostile obstacle. This narrative celebrates agency, struggle, and the ultimate triumph of human will over a natural world that is often framed as an adversary to be mastered. It's a story of separation and victory where the hero stands apart from the monster and their success is measured by its defeat. Journey eastward and the landscape of myth shifts into a different focus. Here, the relationship with these powerful guardians is frequently one of harmony, balance, and reverence rather than outright conflict. The Chinese dragon, or long, is a majestic example. This is no fire-breathing beast to be slain by a saint or knight. It is a celestial being, a benevolent force of nature associated with wisdom, rainfall, and imperial authority. It is a guardian of cosmic order and spiritual truths, and its favor is not won through combat but through respect, virtue, and alignment with the natural world. Knowledge in this context is not a treasure to be seized but a wisdom to be shared when the seeker demonstrates they are in balance with the Tao, the fundamental principle of the universe. The interaction is less about conquest and more about earning the right to receive through inner cultivation and outward respect. This contrast is beautifully illustrated by comparing specific creatures. In Japanese folklore, we encounter the Nu, a chimeric monster with the head of a monkey, the body of a raccoon dog, the legs of a tiger, and a serpent for a tail. This creature is an omen of misfortune, a bringer of sickness and ill weather that guards secrets of decay and misfortune. Yet the legendary tale of the samurai Minamoto no Yorimasa does not end with the beast's simple destruction. Yorimasa does slay the Nu with a precise arrow, but the story is nuanced. The creature is not purely evil. Its disturbance of the imperial palace is a symptom of a deeper imbalance. Yorimasa's act is one of restoring harmony, and he is rewarded not just with a trophy but with a sacred sword, a symbol of his honored role as a restorer of order. The monster could be appeased and its negative influence mitigated through ritual and respect, highlighting a worldview where even fearsome beings are part of a delicate ecosystem that must be understood and balanced, not merely dominated. These narrative differences are not merely artistic preferences, they are reflections of deep-seated cultural foundations. The Western emphasis on individualism and agency can be traced to philosophical and religious traditions that often posit a distinct separation between humanity and nature, and between the individual and the collective. The hero's personal journey and struggle are paramount. Eastern philosophies like Confucianism, Taoism, and Buddhism, however, tend to emphasize interconnectedness, collective harmony, and the importance of understanding one's place within a vast, intricate web of existence. Here, recklessly slaying a powerful spirit could disrupt the balance of the entire natural world, an act of hubris rather than heroism. The goal is not to conquer nature but to align with it, to learn its rhythms and earn its blessings. Yet, for all their differences, these two grand traditions arrive at the same essential, universal conclusion. Whether through the clang of sword on scale or the quiet offering of respect, both Eastern and Western myths insist that profound, powerful knowledge must be approached with the utmost reverence. The monstrous guardian, in all its forms, is the eternal gatekeeper of this principle. It teaches that enlightenment is never cheap, never casual. It demands something of the seeker, be it courage, humility, wisdom, or a sacrifice, ensuring that the value of the truth is matched by the worth of the one who seeks to hold it. When we shift our gaze from the earthly realm to the celestial, we find that the role of the monstrous guardian becomes even more absolute, serving as a direct instrument of divine will. Across major world religions, these beings are not merely symbolic or psychological constructs. They are theological enforcers, appointed by God or the gods to patrol the sacred boundary between the mortal and the divine. Their primary function is to punish hubris, that dangerous human impulse to reach for a level of understanding or power that is strictly reserved for the divine. In this framework, the monster is the ultimate cosmic law enforcement, ensuring that the fundamental hierarchy of creation remains intact and that mortals remember their place within it. Within the Christian tradition, this concept is vividly articulated through the figure of the demon. Far from being a simple agent of evil, the demon often serves as a guardian of infernal knowledge, the terrifying secrets of black magic, necromancy, and pacts that promise power at the cost of one's soul. Medieval grimoires or books of magic are filled with warnings and elaborate rituals designed to summon and control these entities, but they consistently emphasize the immense danger. These texts portray demons not as willing servants, but as cunning, malevolent jailers of a knowledge that is inherently corrupting. To seek a pact with a demon is to attempt to bypass the divine order entirely, to gain knowledge and power without the requisite spiritual development or grace. The demon, as a guardian, represents the terrible price of this shortcut, the eternal damnation that awaits those who would rather make a deal with the devil than submit to the proper, worshipful relationship with God. They are the enforcers of a spiritual law, making the consequences of forbidden inquiry terrifyingly tangible. Islamic theology offers a fascinating and more nuanced counterpart in the form of the jinn. Created by God from smokeless fire, the jinn are beings with free will, existing in a world parallel to our own. Some are righteous, some are wicked, and they are often depicted as the guardians of hidden places, ancient treasures, and esoteric knowledge. In stories from the 1001 Nights and deeper Sufi mystical traditions, jinn can be appeased, bargained with, or even outwitted, but they are ultimately powerful protectors of secrets that are not meant for casual discovery. A seeker might gain a jinn's favor through courage or piety, but confronting one without respect is a recipe for disaster. This portrayal reinforces a key Islamic principle, that all knowledge ultimately belongs to God, and while its pursuit is encouraged, it must be approached with humility and within the boundaries of what has been divinely revealed. The jinn, in their ambiguous power, act as a living reminder that some wisdom is hidden for a reason, and its discovery requires not just bravery but profound spiritual readiness. This theological perspective fundamentally reframes the entire concept of the monstrous guardian. It moves the conflict from a personal struggle between a hero and a beast to a cosmic drama about the very structure of reality. The monster is no longer just a metaphor for our inner fears. It is an agent of God or the gods, a vital component in maintaining the balance of the universe. The knowledge they guard is not just dangerous, it is illicit, a form of divine property that is strictly off limits. To seek it is not merely an act of curiosity, but one of rebellion against the created order itself. This makes the encounter with such a guardian a matter of theology, not just mythology. It's a direct confrontation with the will of the divine, and the hero's success or failure is a testament to either their righteous alignment with that will or their catastrophic pride in challenging it. The monster ensures that cosmic order is preserved by making the cost of overreaching so high that it serves as a deterrent for all of humanity. A story repeated in sermons and scriptures to teach the vital lesson of holy reverence and the peril of aspiring to a godlike understanding without divine sanction. These legendary creatures do more than just guard secrets. They serve as the living, breathing libraries of a culture's most painful and vital lessons, transforming abstract historical trauma into unforgettable, tangible forms. When a society undergoes a collective catastrophe, a famine so severe it drives people to unthinkable acts, or an encounter with the wild that strips away the veneer of civilization. The raw truth of that experience is too potent to be stored in dry historical records. It must be encoded in a story and given a monstrous face to ensure the memory never fades and the warning is passed down through generations in a way that every child can understand and feel in their bones. Consider the Wendigo of Algonquian folklore, a being that is so much more than a simple monster. It emerges from the deepest, darkest winters, a gaunt, skeletal giant with an insatiable hunger for human flesh, often depicted with a heart of ice. This is not a random horror, it is a narrative fossil of a very real and recurring historical nightmare. For communities living in the harsh northern forests, famine was a constant, existential threat. In the depths of a brutal winter, when game disappeared and food stores ran out, the unthinkable specter of cannibalism would emerge. The Wendigo is the perfect, terrifying embodiment of that taboo. It doesn't just represent hunger, it represents the loss of humanity that comes from succumbing to that hunger. The creature's eternal, icy insatiability teaches that once you cross that line, you can never come back. You become the monster, forever cursed and forever hungry. By telling stories of the Wendigo, these communities were not merely trying to scare each other. They were embedding a crucial survival protocol into their cultural DNA. The monster became a living, breathing reminder of a past tragedy, ensuring that the memory of those who starved and the horrific price of resorting to cannibalism would never be forgotten, thus strengthening the social contract and the will to prepare, share, and endure together. A similar process unfolded across the Atlantic with the evolution of the werewolf in European folklore. While often simplified today into a tale of a man transforming under a full moon, the older legends are steeped in a much deeper anxiety about the wilderness and the fragile boundary between human society and the animalistic wild. Medieval Europe was a place of vast, dark forests that pressed in on small, vulnerable villages. These woods were not just physically dangerous, they were psychologically threatening, representing the unknown, the lawless, and the untamed. The werewolf myth likely grew from this primal fear. It guards a secret knowledge about our own innate animality, the capacity for savage violence and primal instinct that lies buried just beneath the surface of civilized behavior. Stories of werewolves often emerge in times of war, plague, or social breakdown, when that thin veneer of civilization was at its most fragile. The monster acts as a cautionary tale about what happens when we lose our humanity, when we give in to the beast within. It preserves the cultural memory of those terrifying periods when order collapsed and the wolf at the door wasn't just a metaphor. It was a part of yourself you had to constantly fight to control. By making this fear into a creature that could be named and described, communities could better manage the anxiety of their own potential for savagery. This function of the monster as a narrative safeguard is one of humanity's most ingenious psychological inventions. A community can't easily pass down a law that simply says, "Do not eat people," or "Do not become savage," and expect it to carry the same weight for centuries. But a story about a Wendigo that steals your soul, or a man who becomes a wolf and devours his own family, that is unforgettable. The visceral horror of the tale, the chilling details of the monster's appearance and actions, creates a powerful emotional anchor for the lesson. It translates a complex historical lesson about survival and morality into a simple, potent cause and effect equation. Break this taboo and you will become this. This narrative strategy ensures that the consequences of forgetting are not abstract but vividly, terrifyingly real. The monster becomes the guardian of the past's hardest-won wisdom, a custodian of cultural memory that ensures the mistakes of the ancestors are not repeated, not because a law says so, but because a story makes the price of transgression feel as immediate and real as the monster lurking just beyond the firelight. And so the battle is won. The beast lies vanquished, the treasure is seized, the secret is uncovered. But the story is far from over. In fact, the most critical chapter is just beginning the story of what happens next. The hero who steps away from the carcass of the monstrous guardian is never the same person who first approached it. They have passed through a fire of their own making and emerge fundamentally altered, bearing the marks of their encounter not just as scars, but as an integral part of their new identity. This is the true purpose of the ordeal. It is a refining process, a brutal but necessary alchemy that transmutes a mere seeker into a worthy keeper of profound truth. The monster was never just a lock on a door. It was the key that unlocks a new state of being. Consider the journey of Perseus from Greek myth. His victory over the Gorgon Medusa is a legendary feat of heroism, but his story doesn't end with a triumphant return and a life of ease. He secures her severed head, a weapon of petrifying power, and he does use it to save his mother and defeat his enemies, but he cannot simply hang it on a wall as a trophy. He carries it with him, this horrifying, potent object, a constant reminder of the monstrous power he now wields. He must learn to live with it, to control its application, to understand the weight of turning living beings to stone. The knowledge he gained how to navigate the lair of the Gorgons, how to use a reflection as a weapon, is now a permanent part of him. He is not just a hero, he is the bearer of the Gorgon's head, a title that comes with immense responsibility and a permanent tether to a traumatic, world-altering event. He is integrated into a new, more complex understanding of power, where victory and burden are two sides of the same coin. This transformation is the ultimate guarantee that the forbidden knowledge won't be misused. The ordeal itself forges the psychological and moral container needed to hold it. A person who has not faced the monster, who has not been broken down and rebuilt by the experience, would be like a child holding a live wire. They possess the object but lack the maturity and strength to handle its force without being destroyed. The trauma, the wisdom, the scars, these are not byproducts of the quest. They are its most vital products. They are the proof of payment, the receipt for a price paid in full. The hero might gain the ability to see the future, but they also gain the haunting visions of tragedies they cannot prevent. They might learn the secret of immortality, but they also inherit the profound loneliness of outliving everyone they ever loved. The knowledge always comes as a package deal, and the monster ensures the seeker accepts all the terms and conditions before the download begins. This post-encounter metamorphosis often catapults the hero into a new, unasked-for role in society. They return from the periphery not as a curious outsider, but as a shaman, a king, a sage, or a prophet. Beowulf's defeat of Grendel and his mother doesn't just earn him treasure and songs. It marks him as a leader, a protector of peoples, the one who stands between civilization and the chaos that lurks in the dark waters. With that title comes the expectation that he will continue to confront such threats, that he will bear the collective fear of his people. He is transformed from a warrior seeking glory into a pillar of his community, a role that ultimately leads him to his final, fatal battle with a dragon. The monster he defeated defined the monster he would become in the public eye, their designated guardian. The knowledge he gained of the monster's nature, of his own capacity for extreme violence, integrates him into the social order not as a regular citizen, but as a living instrument of its defense. He is set apart, revered, but also isolated by the very power he worked so hard to obtain. The encounter doesn't just change who he is, it changes his relationship to everyone else, weaving him into the fabric of his world as a central, indispensable, yet forever altered thread. This ancient dance between seekers and guardians has never truly ended. It has simply evolved, finding new stages in the digital landscapes we now inhabit. The mythical dragons and serpents that once coiled around sacred groves and hidden treasures have undergone a profound transformation. their essence now encoded in the very fabric of our technology. Today, the concept of forbidden knowledge is fiercely protected not by scales and fire, but by digital firewalls, complex encryption algorithms, and intricate ethical debates over who gets to control the flow of information. The modern labyrinth is not made of stone but of code, and the Minotaur at its center is an artificial intelligence, its logic both brilliant and inscrutable. Governments and massive corporations have stepped into the role of the high priests and ruling elites of old, acting as the new gatekeepers. They control access to what is deemed the most dangerous digital knowledge, the launch codes for nuclear arsenals, the proprietary algorithms that shape global markets and social behavior, the advanced biomedical research that could cure diseases or accidentally engineer a pandemic. These entities justify their role with the same age-old argument that this knowledge is too powerful, too destabilizing for the general populace to handle without causing chaos. They position themselves not as oppressors, but as the necessary protectors of a fragile global order, the only ones wise enough to navigate the labyrinth and keep the modern Minotaur at bay. Yet, just as in the oldest myths, new monsters have arisen to challenge these established guardians, creating a dynamic and often terrifying ecosystem. The online world is now prowled by its own legendary beasts, hackers who act as digital tricksters, breaking down the walls of corporations to expose secrets or hold data for ransom. State-sponsored cyber espionage groups that function like invisible armies, stealing intellectual property and state secrets, and malicious software viruses that replicate like mythological plagues, corrupt systems and holding knowledge hostage. These entities are the ambiguous monsters of our new age. In some narratives, they are the destructive dragons, exploiting knowledge for personal gain or sheer chaos. In others, they are the rebellious Promethean figures, stealing fire from the modern gods of Silicon Valley and Washington, D.C., to distribute it amongst the people, whether the powerful like it or not. A whistleblower platform like WikiLeaks, for instance, can be framed as a heroic slayer of an opaque governmental dragon, or as a monstrous force unleashing dangerous secrets upon the world, depending entirely on one's perspective. This duality perfectly mirrors the ancient archetype where the monster's nature is defined by the seeker's intention and the guardian's point of view. This evolution of the guardian archetype forces us to confront some of the most pressing questions of our time. Who are the true monsters in this digital landscape? Is it the shadowy hacker in a foreign country, or the faceless corporation harvesting our personal data to manipulate our choices? What constitutes the forbidden knowledge they are fighting over? Is it the inner workings of a social media algorithm designed to maximize addiction, or the secret surveillance programs that track our every move online? The battle is no longer for a golden fleece or a holy grail, but for our digital souls, our privacy, our autonomy, and our very perception of reality. The stories we tell about these conflicts are the new myths shaping our understanding of power in the 21st century. They reveal that the human tension between the thirst for transparency and the fear of dangerous truths is more relevant than ever. As we navigate this complex world of digital guardians and monstrous threats, we are all participants in an age-old story, forced to decide for ourselves what knowledge should be free, what should be protected, and who we trust to stand watch at the gate. And so we arrive at the final and perhaps most personal question of all. Why do these stories, these ancient tales of monsters and the forbidden truths they guard, continue to capture our imagination century after century? Why do they feel just as potent and relevant today as they did to audiences thousands of years ago, sitting around fires and listening to bards? The answer lies not in the monsters themselves, but in the timeless human dilemmas they represent: the eternal push and pull between our boundless curiosity and our instinct for caution, between the drive to innovate and the comfort of tradition, and between the thirst for absolute freedom and the weight of responsibility that comes with it. Every single one of us, at some point in our lives, has stood before our own personal version of a forbidden door. It might not be a cave sealed by a dragon, but the allure is the same. It's the confidential document we're not supposed to read, the surprising birthday gift we're tempted to peek at, the private conversation we accidentally overhear, or the professional secret we're trusted to keep. This universal experience is the bedrock upon which these myths are built. They resonate because they speak to a fundamental part of the human condition, that magnetic, often irresistible pull toward the unknown, the hidden, and the prohibited. We are a species hardwired for curiosity. It's the engine of our progress and our greatest strength. But these stories remind us that it is also, potentially, our greatest vulnerability. This is where the genius of the monster truly shines. Concepts like a danger or catastrophic consequence are too abstract, too vast and shapeless for our minds to fully grasp and internalize. How do you explain the soul-crushing weight of a truth that could shatter someone's world? How do you convey the paralyzing fear of making a choice that could unravel your entire life? You give it a face, you give it claws and scales and a deafening roar. The monster is a brilliant narrative shortcut, a psychological tool that takes an intangible, existential risk and makes it visceral, immediate, and unforgettable. It transforms a complex philosophical warning into a simple, powerful equation that even a child can understand. Open that door, and this is what will be waiting for you. The story provides a safe space to simulate that confrontation, to experience the thrill of the quest and the terror of the consequence without actually risking our lives. It allows us to manage our anxiety about the unknown by giving it a form we can, in theory, overcome. This is why the archetype is so endlessly adaptable. The specific monster and the specific knowledge it guards might change with the times, but the core function remains constant. The dragon guarding a hoard of gold in a medieval legend is a perfect metaphor for the destructive nature of greed. Today, that same metaphorical dragon might be a complex, algorithmically driven stock market, guarding immense wealth that can elevate or ruin lives, a system so powerful and seemingly sentient that it might as well be a beast. The Sphinx posing a lethal riddle becomes a modern-day entrance exam for a top university or a brutal job interview, guarding a future of success and testing for a specific kind of intellectual and emotional fitness. The serpent in the garden, offering a tempting fruit, finds its parallel in the sleek smartphone in our pocket, offering the entire world's knowledge and connection, but at the potential cost of our privacy, our attention spans, and our mental well-being. The persistence of these stories across millennia is the strongest evidence we have that they are answering a deep and perpetual human need. As long as we continue to push boundaries, to ask questions that are not meant to be asked, and to seek power and understanding that may lie beyond our grasp, we will require these cautionary metaphors. They are not there to stifle our progress, but to temper it with wisdom. They are the narrative safeguards etched into our collective consciousness, a timeless reminder that every blessing of knowledge carries a potential cost, and that the true mark of a hero isn't just the courage to seek the truth, but the wisdom to know what to do with it once it's found. From the shadowy labyrinths of ancient Crete to the glowing digital firewalls of our modern age, one powerful motif has endured, revealing a profound and universal truth about who we are. These stories of monstrous guardians are far more than simple fairy tales. They are a mirror held up to humanity itself, reflecting our deepest fears, our most soaring ambitions, and our insatiable, endless quest to understand the universe and our place within it. They teach us a vital lesson that we often forget in our rush for innovation and discovery: that knowledge is never a neutral commodity. It is not a simple object to be found and possessed. True, transformative knowledge carries an immense weight. It demands sacrifice, whether of our innocence, our comfort, or our old ways of seeing the world. And above all, it requires a deep and hard-won wisdom to wield it responsibly. Every time a hero in these legends chooses to face the dragon, to answer the Sphinx, or to descend into the underworld, they are doing so much more than embarking on an adventure. They are engaging in the most crucial battle of all, the confrontation with the self. The monster they face externally is a manifestation of their own internal struggles, their pride, their greed, their fears, and their temptations. By standing their ground and facing that terrifying creature, they are ultimately facing the darkest and most powerful parts of their own psyche. This is the true alchemy of these stories. It is through this struggle, this willingness to engage with the monstrous, that genuine growth occurs. The hero does not emerge with just a treasure or a secret. They emerge transformed, scarred perhaps, but infinitely wiser and more integrated. As we navigate our own complex world, filled with its own set of modern, forbidden knowledge, from the ethical dilemmas of artificial intelligence and genetic engineering to the hidden algorithms shaping our reality and the secrets of cosmic origins, these ancient legends offer a timeless compass. They remind us to approach the incredible power at our fingertips not with arrogance but with humility, to pursue truth not with reckless abandon but with courage, and to handle the profound understandings we unlock not with a sense of ownership but with a profound respect for the responsibility they confer. These stories are our inheritance, a gift from our ancestors that continues to guide us, urging us to be not just smart but wise, not just seekers but guardians worthy of the truths we seek.